We're live. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Very happy to be joined by Martin Edwards, probably one of the most accomplished crime authors in terms of various awards and things like that we've got in our group. Would you like to start us off with an intro to you and your books?
Well, thanks, Caroline. It's not the first time we've chatted together. We've done it quite a few times. It's always great fun. So I was really delighted when you said you'd like to have a chat about crime writing generally, but specifically about my new book, which is called Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife, and I've cunningly brought it along, put on my shelf, and it's a book that was published yesterday. I had a launch party that was great fun yesterday in Serenity Booksellers near Stockport, so that was great, and it's been a very exciting process. A book that's a bit different for me to write, and a book that originally I wasn't entirely sure whether I was going to write it or not, but my lovely editor Bethan at Head of Zeus talked me into it, and I'm very glad she did so.
So, is the premise that it is somewhat like a choose your own way through the story, or does it read like a novel and you just try
Oh,
to
it's very much a novel. It's not a choose your own. There are those stories around. Anson Johnson has just published a good one, for instance. But this is not the same. This is well, I'll tell you the story, shall I, of how it came about. What happened was my agent James was talking to Bethan, who inherited me from my previous editor, who left to have children, and so Bethan at that time was somebody we'd never actually met, and Bethan said to James that when he offered her 2 more books in the Rachel Savanake series, which I was very keen to write, really love writing those books, she said she'd be very happy to take them, but she also wanted a book in between the 2 Rachel Savanake books. So the Rachel books, there was Hemlock Bay, which I think you and I have spoken about previously, which came out a year ago. And the other one is a story called Fever Island, which I'm writing at the moment. I've nearly finished the first draft. So she was happy with those, but she suggested to James that she'd like me to write a Christmas puzzle mystery. And when that message came back to me, I really wasn't sure about it, because there are an awful lot of Christmas mysteries about, and I thought they were going to get buried in an avalanche of snow-filled covers. So I wasn't absolutely sure it was the right thing for me to do. So Bethany invited me for lunch to talk it over. It was a very long lunch, and she's a very persuasive person. We got on very well. And by the end of the lunch, firstly, I'd agreed to do it. And secondly, I'd had an idea for what would be the major plot twist. And that still is the major plot twist, although at that time I didn't have much more than that. But that was an idea that came to me during the lunch. It's amazing what a glass of wine can do for you. It was an idea I was really, really happy with, and she was really happy with it. And so I agreed to do it. We didn't have a title then. We didn't have anything other than this concept. It was going to be set at Christmas, and it was going to involve snow, and there was this particular idea that just came to me that I was really excited enough to, as I say, agree to do it. So I had a 3-book contract then, and then I wrote Hemlock Bay, and then I started early 2024 writing Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife, as it became. But at the time I started writing it, it didn't have a title, and I came up with a title, and my title was Evil Under the Snow, which I was very attached to. I thought it was a good title. It was a riff on Agatha Christie, Evil Under the Sun, so I was pleased with that. But Bethan thought it wouldn't quite work for what she had in mind. and she wanted puzzles in the stories, and she felt that wasn't quite the right title. So we had a discussion about that, and then she came up. It was her idea. She came up with this title, Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife, and she persuaded me that it was a good title. Oh, I have to say that at this point, there's no reference whatsoever in the little bit of story I'd started writing to Miss Winter or a library or a knife. That and indeed, to this day, there is no actual character called Miss Winter, although events do take place in a village called Midwinter in the North Pennines, right at the top of the Pennines, where Yorkshire joins Northumberland and Cumbria. So that was a curious way to start a book. I'd never really done it before. Bethan liked the idea of puzzles, I suppose influenced by Myrtle and that kind of thing, which I like. I like puzzles. But I was always very clear to her from that first meeting, that first lunch, that it had to be absolutely a novel first and foremost. You can have the puzzles around it, but I always wanted those to be something that an individual reader could either look at, try to solve, or ignore, and it wouldn't affect the book. That was pretty important to me, because at the end of the day, I'm a novelist. I'm not a puzzle maker, and the two things are not the same. Even though in my novels there are puzzles in the plots, but it's still a different skill. I'm pretty clear about that. So it was a strange book, particularly in the early days, to write, and there's quite a lot of deadline pressure, because Bethan wanted the book to be available to show to, and my agent James also wanted this, to be able to show to foreign publishers at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and that's in October. And we'd agreed the delivery date was January, and I'm not a very fast writer of novels anyway. You know, I need a year generally to write a novel. So I wasn't confident about that, and so it wasn't the easiest book to write. And the way that I console myself was this. Yeah, I think when you're writing a novel, it's really important to love what you're doing and to enjoy it, even when it's hard work. You've got to really believe in it. And so I was consciously telling myself, you know, I must believe in this project. And how can I kind of crystallize that in some way in the writing process? I thought, I know what I'll do. I'm going to have some fun, enjoy myself to some extent at the expense of the publishing industry. Something I've been involved with for many, many years, 30 odd years. And it's, of course, an industry I love enormously and I'm very grateful to. But it's also got its quirky side. And I always feel that you should be able to make fun of things and have some humor in a book anyway. You know, there's always an element of humor in my books to a greater or lesser degree. And I thought I'm going to have some fun with the characters, because the characters in the novel are associated in one way or another with publishing. So there's an agent, there's an editor, there's a podcaster, and so on. So that was in the DNA of the story, really from a very, very early point. And that was how I enjoyed myself when I was writing. I'll come up with some jokes, and jokes like, you see a blurb that says such and such, and what does it really mean? That kind of thing. Reading between the lines, jokes about the publishing industry. So I thought that readers would be amused by them. I hope that would be the case, and I was amused, which was important, because I think when you're writing a novel, it's a long-term commitment. So first and foremost, I do believe, certainly in my own case, I have to write for me. It's got to be something I believe in. It's something I care about a lot, because I'm going to spend an awful lot of my life devoted to it whilst I'm working on it. So that comes first. But of course, you also want other people, the readers, the members of the UK Crime Book Club, and everyone else to enjoy it as well. So you've got a dual objective. You're writing for yourself, but you're also writing to entertain other people. And this is where I think the humour often helps. Having a good plot, good characters, interesting setting. I researched the setting quite extensively, even though Midwinter is a fictional village. I went up to that part of the world, spent a couple of days driving around with Anne Cleves, an old friend of mine, who knows that part of the world very, very well. And just trying to get a sense of what it's like in these fairly remote rural communities. There's no snow on the ground, but you get a sense of the remoteness and the isolation of small communities. And that helps you, that kind of research helps you with the authenticity of the writing, even though you've made up a place for the story. I do think that it helps if there's some backdrop of reality and authenticity there as well. So the research was important. I spent quite a bit of time researching different aspects of the story. I spent quite a bit of time researching puzzles and puzzle books and what people like about puzzle books. And I was very interested in that, because when you look at, and I bought a number of puzzle books, because one of the questions in my mind was, how difficult do the puzzles need to be? Do they need to be really fiendish, or do they need to be puzzles that pretty much anybody can solve? And when I read about the puzzle books, I read the GCHQ puzzle book. I couldn't solve any of them. I'll never get into GCHQ because it's very, very difficult. And I read the reviews. That's a very successful book. It's a very good book, but all the reviews are about what a great gift it is. That I couldn't find reviews from people saying they'd actually solved the puzzles. So I decided that my puzzles would not be too complicated. They wouldn't be childish, but they would be little added extras, like bonus features on a Blu-ray or a DVD, that kind of thing. Things that you can take or leave. And if you take them, hopefully they'll give a bit of fun and entertainment. But they don't, I like to think, affect the enjoyment of the story. And it's the story that really matters. And that's what, of course, I really care about, writing a story that I love and that I hope other people will love too.
So it's early for a Christmas book to come out in September, is it? I don't know how often.
It is. It's really the start of the season. It's really this week that is the start of the books for Christmas season. But part of the thinking at Head of Zeus behind the title, Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife, was that their thinking developed. It's a book that's set at Christmas, but they wanted it to be a book that people could read and enjoy at any time of year. And we did discuss titles quite extensively. But the Miss Winter in the Library with a Life, it's got this game playing element, and the main story. There's a game in the main story. There's a game element in Golden Age fiction. There's a game element in Rachel Savnate books. So Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife is not a seasonal title as such, and that was pretty deliberate. What they wanted to do was to try and get the best of possible worlds, if achievable, by having a book set at Christmas, but one that wasn't dependent on the Christmas setting, didn't have a Christmassy title. A book that would be a nice present. And so what they've done, I mentioned this before we came on air live, what they've done for independent bookshops, they've produced this wonderful special edition, only available in independent bookshops, so not on Amazon or elsewhere. But it's got these sprayed edges, and it looks really terrific. It's and they're all signed by me. So I spent a day in a warehouse in Didcot signing over 1,000 books, which was a new experience. I can tell you, never signed that many in one go. It takes a while, I can tell you. And in fact, when I went to the warehouse, they had a leaderboard, because other authors, they've timed them how quickly they've signed their 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever it is books. And I was invited to compete. No, I don't want the signature to be just a scrawl. Yeah, it's a nice book, and you want a nice signature, well, as nice as it can be in my case, a nice signature in it. So that was a really fascinating experience. I had a strange and fascinating experience with the audiobook as well. Again, something that's never happened to me before. Bethan, my editor, there's actually a character in the novel called Bethan, because as I say, it's part of the fun of the experience, and the book is dedicated to the real Bethan. But Bethan came up with this idea of me reading bits of the audiobook, because the book begins with rules of the game, and it ends, like the Rachel Savanate books, with a clue finder. And there's a cast of characters. So she thought it would be a nice idea, in addition to the professional actors who are recording the book. And there's a male actor, Mark Elstubb, and there's a female actor called Candida Gubbins. But she suggested that I record these segments. And I was blown away, because I'm not one of life's public readers or anything like that. I'm certainly not an actor. But she thought it was a good idea. So I had a fun day in the studio down in London recording my bits, and that was that again was something I've never done before and may well never do again. But it was interesting. So this has altogether been a very, very interesting and different experience, despite the fact I've been around for a long time, and despite the fact this is novel number 24. But it has had this freshness and this difference that when you have been around a long time is incredibly exciting and energizing. So I'm very happy it's all worked out. I'm very happy the book's finally published.
Malcolm says good evening.
Good evening, Malcolm.
I'm intrigued as to who was top of the leaderboard in the warehouse.
Yeah, I was told, and I've actually forgotten, because I kind of put it out of my mind. No, I'm not going to compete. I'm not going to race people, but it was a long list of people. And there were also photographs of people who'd been in there because this is a brand new warehouse. It's only been open for a few months, I think. So they've only had a limited number of people. But I saw a few friends of mine, people like Mick Heron, Louise Penny, Anthony Hodgson. They were all there, and when you go in there, they photograph you against the background of the books and that sort of thing. So that again is all part of the experience, and it was a lot of fun. So just something I've never done before.
It's good that this one keeps some of the features like the clue finder, because I always really enjoy reading that at the end of the book. Good.
Well, I've been delighted, thrilled actually by the response to the clue finder, because many years ago I first came across these clue finders in the books of the late 1920s and the 1930s, and there were a few in the 1940s, and it was a device I always really loved. I thought it was really clever. I thought it was good that the writers demonstrated they were playing fair with the reader. They had the confidence to do that. And I decided to do it as a one-off for Mortmain Hall, which was the second Rachel Savenay novel. And it was very much a detective story, whereas the first novel, Gallows Court, was more of a kind of psychological thriller. Lots of twists and turns, but it wasn't in any way a conventional detective novel. And Mortmain Hall wasn't conventional, but I thought it'd be fun because the storyline was very intricate. It would be fun to have a clue finder. I was very pleased that the publishers liked it, and then readers liked it, and the response was so good that they asked me to do another one in Blackstone Fell, and then more readers got in touch, and so I did one for Sepulchre Street, I did one for Hemlock Bay as well, and some other writers have started doing putting clue finders in, which is terrific. Tom Mead has had them. So that really is a lot of fun. And in fact, the publishers have asked me to do a clue finder for Gallows Court now, the very first book, which didn't have one. So I've done that now. So that all the books in the Rachel Savenay have the clue finder. And although this novel, Miss Winter, is very different in many respects from Rachel Savenay. It is a contemporary novel. It's set, right now, and it's got a lot of contemporary references of all kinds, as people will see when they read it. But I thought it was fun to hark back to the golden age in some ways, as I like to do. Clue finder is part of it. Some of the plot elements are golden agey, there are references to golden age novels and so on, and you don't have to be a golden age fan to appreciate them, but it again is a kind of bonus thing if you're into that sort of reading.
Malcolm says he's would you explain what a clue finder is for Malcolm?
Certainly. A clue finder really derives from the idea of the detective story as a game between the reader and the writer. And during the golden age of detective fiction, which let's say between the two world wars, pretty much, things changed in society, and as always happens, they therefore changed in fiction, and they changed in detective fiction. And writers of detective stories had always been keen, or many of them been keen on the idea of playing fair. Arthur Conan Doyle talked about it, for instance, and he was keen on fair play in his Sherlock Holmes stories. But the way that he interpreted it was, by modern standards, quite narrow. So he thought it was playing fair to explain how Sherlock Holmes arrived at his deductions, explaining the bits of evidence that led him to his conclusions. But the reader didn't have that knowledge, so the reader couldn't beat Sherlock to it. So in The Hound of the Baskervilles, he picks up a walking stick and he astounds Watson with his deductions, but we don't see the walking stick. So we're not competing with him, we're not playing a game. But Conan Doyle is still playing fair in that sense. But after the First World War, there was a great enthusiasm for games, for crossword puzzles, all that kind of thing. And the nature of detective fiction did change. Agatha Christie and many others came on the scene. And what they were doing, they were writing novels, their own short stories as well. But before the First World War, short stories had been in the ascendancy. Sherlock Holmes, Father Brown, and so on. Now it was novels. And a novel gave you the space to hide the clues in the text and challenge the reader to spot the clues. And the better writers would misdirect the reader's attention away from the clues in one way or another. And Christie was especially good at this, but so were many others. And that's the skill, persuading the reader to misinterpret what's going on. And then at the end, all is revealed and the clues make sense. And quite a lot of writers, both in Britain and America, actually put towards the end of the book a challenge to the reader. There's a page when the reader is challenged. Can you solve this mystery? Sometimes several questions are asked. And the reader was told all the information is there in the book. So the challenge to the reader became a thing in the late 20s. And the clue finder was another step beyond that, because what the writers, and there's a guy called J.J. Connington, detective novelist, a Scot, a professor of chemistry, who wrote some pretty good Golden Age detective novels. He was the first person to reference, he did it in footnotes on the page, reference the pages in the text where the clue was to be found. And so you get several page references. And this idea caught on. Other writers liked it, readers liked it, because it was playing fair to the ultimate extent, really, showing you the page references, where you've been given that information, but very often your eye would have been gliding over it. So that developed in the 30s. There was an American writer called Daley King, who was a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and he created these most elaborate clue finders that went on for pages, very, very extensive. The stories were very intricate, and I've always liked Daley King's books. They are a bit crazy, but they are very, very clever. Dorothy L. Sayers greatly admired him. She called him the highbrow among highbrows, and that's, for Dorothy L. Sayers, that, you know, there's no greater praise probably. So these things had always appealed to me, and so in my books, as I say, I've been putting these clue finders at the back of the book to highlight the pages and the quotes that have the clues in, so that the reader can see that they have been given the information that was relevant to the solution of the mystery, or maybe the subplot as well, because my books tend to have more than one strand of plot going on at any one time.
Good answer. Sarah has asked you if you're going to write more Lake District or Harry Devlin books.
I hope to. The Lake District books, I'm very happy to say, have started coming out in new ebook editions with Joffrey, and they've been doing very well, which is really encouraging. You know, Amazon bestsellers and all that sort of thing. So that has really enthused me. I've been very happy about it, and I would like to get back to that series of Anna and Daniel. I can say that the next Rachel Savnate book is set in the Lake District. Fever Island is to be found in the Lake District. So I am returning there in the book I'm writing at the moment. But I would like to get back to the Lakes series, and I hope it will happen. With Harry, it's really a question of how many hours in the day. I always love writing about Harry, so I really would like to get back to Harry, and I'm hoping that those two will come out again before too long. But I've got nothing specific in mind at the moment. But I'm pretty fond of Harry. When I started writing about Harry, he was the same age as me, actually, but he's aged a lot better than I've aged. So I'd be quite tempted to go back to Harry, and for Harry to explore modern Liverpool, which is very interesting. He did that a bit in Waterloo Sunset, which I wrote after a break of about 10 or 12 years. And I enjoy writing that book a lot. So I know I'd enjoy writing about him if I can get the time to do so.
So you I think I asked this question a while ago to when we interviewed Linda LaPlante. You've sort of got to that point where you've like peaked in your career quite high. You've won an Edgar Award, you've won like the CWA Daggers, you've got all the series. What keeps you motivated and keeps you writing?
It's a very good question, but it's not a particularly difficult one to answer, actually. I've always written. I wrote when I was a boy. Yeah, I've still got those detective stories I wrote when I was 10. I've always been fascinated with detective fiction. I might switch the light on, actually, because I'm now shrouded in mysterious darkness. But
I thought you were going for an edgy crime look.
well, maybe I won't put the light on there. Maybe this is very appropriate to a crime conversation.
It does mean we can't see the cover, though. So
I'll just talk about it a lot instead. Yeah, but I've always loved writing. I wrote for many years before I was published, and I would write if I wasn't published because I just love the experience of writing. It's what I do. It's the only thing I ever wanted to do, and I still love doing it at least as much as I ever did. I'm very happy with what's happened. I'm very happy with the awards. I'm very happy with all the things I've done, all the places I've gone to around the world. It's been fantastic. I never dreamed of that when I was a small boy who did dream of writing lots of crime novels, but I never thought about all these other things happening as well. So I know I've been very fortunate in that respect, but it was never part of the plan to set out to win awards or be chair of the CWA or president of the Detection Club, any of that. The plan was always to write the best crime stories that I, long or short, because I do love writing short stories as well. It's because it's what I feel I do, and I really love doing it. I also love finishing the book. I've got to say that. So that's always a relief. But you know, when it all makes sense, the book I'm writing at the moment, Fever Island, I'm just drawing all the strands together, and it's very satisfying. And I increase my speed. As I said, I'm not a fast writer, but I write a bit quicker at the end because that process of solving the mysteries I've set up is an exciting one for me, and it still excites me as much as it always did. There's no reduction, there's no boredom. One of the things I do is every single book, even within a series, every time I try to do something a bit different. So Fever Island is a bit different in some ways from the other books. It's got more character development of Rachel and the Trumans, for instance. Hemlock Bay was different because I started with a diary of somebody who intended to kill a man he didn't even know. And so and this is true of the Harry Devlin books and the Lake District books as well. Every book within the series, quite apart from the standalones, is distinct and different. And that makes the whole writing process more interesting to me. It was one of the reasons why, despite my initial reservations about this book, Miss Winter in the Library with the Knife, I was quite easily persuaded to do it because it was a bit of a challenge to me as a writer to do a book with puzzles and a Christmas novel and all that kind of thing, and a different style to some extent. So I keep challenging myself to do something different, try to become a better writer with every book. I'm not saying one necessarily achieves that, but the aim is always that each book should be better than what I've done before. That's important to me as an aim, and not just do the same old. And of course, it's one of the reasons I'm not a terribly fast writer, because it's quite easy to churn out a lot of books that are fairly similar. But and then that's fine. And yeah, I read and enjoy books of that type, but it's not what I personally want to do, because life is short and you can only write so many books, and I want each of my books to be something that's special, at least to me, if to nobody else, and that's really been something that I've stuck to pretty rigorously throughout my writing career. And in fact, it's the reason why initially I was uncertain about writing this book, because it wasn't something that the idea, the suggestion didn't come from me. So I had, as I explained earlier, I had to mentally, psychologically adjust it. I had to embrace it. So it was me. It was my book. And I did really, really care about it, because I think if you don't care enormously about what you write, eventually it shows. And we've all read books like that, and they may be okay, but that's really not what I want particularly to do myself.
Fair enough. I'm going to let you put your light on. Although your book does have slightly glowing edges.
Does have
a slightly glowing edge.
Oh, that's good. Would you like me to put the light on?
I think so. I think we could see.
I think the edginess can be taken too far. Bear with me one moment.
There you go. Lovely.
How's that?
Much
right.
better.
Okay. You can see me and the book.
I've got several follow-up questions. I'm going to petition you to do, now you've discovered this writing a slightly seasonal book, to do a Halloween-themed Rachel Savernake book. She's always got a bit of a gothic vibe, and I reckon that'd be brilliant. It would make me very happy as a fan.
Well, thank you. That's an excellent suggestion. And I did a Halloween-themed Harry Devlin, actually, and it is a time of year that I find very interesting. I've actually got another idea for a standalone, which again has a Halloween element. But Rachel, you're right. Rachel would suit Halloween. She's got that.
There's a bit of a gothic vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. Gothic Golden Age, as my American publisher says.
Yeah. It's one of the things that drew me in. I started it slightly out of order because I think I read Mortmain Hall first, and then went back to Gallows Court, and then I've done the rest in the right.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I really like about it, is it's like kind of gothic.
Yes, and I'm grateful you say that, and I will remember the Halloween point. It's a good suggestion.
Has the urge to write crime fiction from being quite young been what sort of almost turned you into a bit of a scholar of crime fiction? Because you are kind of known for writing books about like the history of crime fiction.
Yeah. Well, when I started out as a child, there were two things, and I discovered Agatha Christie and adult detective fiction. I'd read Enid Blyton's detective stories and the Biggles detective stories, so I had a bit of a background even before that. But the two things, I definitely wanted to write my own mystery stories, and I definitely wanted to read as many as I could get hold of. And of course, the more I read, and this is before the internet, when you can find out all sorts of things, and before AI, AI tells you things you don't even want to know. That's very, very intrusive, isn't it? So there's none of that when I was a child. So I was very keen to find out about detective stories and the people who wrote them. I was interested because I wanted to be a crime writer. I wanted to be a writer, but I specifically wanted to be a crime writer. So I wanted to find out about the people who wrote them. And I was given a Christmas present, which was a CWA anthology. I was very interested in the CWA from that age. And I never thought I'd edit the CWA anthology for 20 odd years, but that's the way it's turned out. So I tried to get as much information as I could. And then I came across, when I was, I don't know, 18, 19, something like that, I came across Julian Simmons' book, The History, Bloody Murder. And I thought that was a great book. I still think it's a great book, even though I don't agree with a lot of what he says. But it's a significant book. And one of the good things about that book was it told me about books I'd never heard of. And that was very helpful because it led me in all sorts of other directions and haunting secondhand bookshops. And again, you see, it's quite easy now with the internet and eBay and AbeBooks to find books from all over the world, even quite rare and obscure books. But in those days, when I was growing up, it wasn't possible in the same way. So it took years to track some of these books down. Yeah, spent about 20 years looking for one of them. But in the end, that interest in gathering information fused with my interest in writing. And Andrew Taylor, who's a very good friend of mine and a great writer, great crime writer, he suggested to me way back in the late 90s, and he remembers this conversation to this day. Andrew suggested I write a history. And I thought at that time I'd only published 4 or 5 novels. I can't do it, but I never forgot the conversation. So over time, as I got more confident and as I read more and more books and found out more and more about writers and their lives, and that's always greatly interested me. I thought I would like to write about it, and I started the Golden Age of Murder, thinking that nobody would really be interested, because at that time the Golden Age was still very much out of fashion, and my agent didn't think it would sell, and she was a very good agent, but so I just carried on writing and didn't tell her that I was writing it. Mm-hmm. And in the end, by the time it was finished, because it took years and years to write in little segments, fashion had moved on, and all of a sudden Golden Age was becoming fashionable, and the British Library Crime Classics had started. So my timing for once in my life was good. So all of a sudden I've always been an unfashionable writer in many ways. The Harry Devlin novels had Golden Age plots, but the critics never mentioned that aspect, and that was very frustrating to me. And I realised with hindsight, it's because the Golden Age was out of critical fashion in the 90s when I was writing those books. But now, of course, things have changed. So maybe, of course, this is an argument for writing more Harry Devlin and reviving them, because those books have strong Golden Age elements, even though they're set in sort of gritty Liverpool underworld, some of them. But that interest in The Devil in Disguise, which is the 6th book, I was getting pretty frustrated with the fact nobody was noticing what I was trying to do. So that book explicitly name checks Agatha Christie, and it uses an Agatha Christie style plot but turns it around. There's lots of stuff about Golden Age detective fiction in The Devil in Disguise, and still nobody paid any attention to it in any of the reviews. It got good reviews, but it's just that writing, like everything else, is susceptible to fashion, and luckily I've hung around long enough, survived long enough, and maintained my enthusiasm long enough to be fortunate, so that finally publishers and critics are interested in what I and other readers were always interested in, which is a really interesting, twisty detective story. And of course, that's hugely exciting.
Market stalls back in the day were where I used to find really random books. used to be great when in Leeds Market. You could buy a book from it and then take it back and return it and get a different book.
Fantastic, yeah, and of course that you could pick up these forgotten books, but the problem was that so many were out of print, and before digital printing, digital technology came in, once a book was out of print, it vanished from the shelves, and it's partly changing that has helped make these books cheaper to produce and more available. So the British Library is a bit of a phenomenon. It's a bit of a one-off, but lots of other little imprints reprinting old books now, and some of them are done as ebooks as well. And that's all come about because of technological change, and it's made available books that have just not been seen for a very, very long time, maybe 70, maybe 80, maybe 90 years. And the fact that you can now find these books and afford to buy them cheaply is fantastic. It's one of the great blessings of technology, I would say.
Tell us what you've read recently and enjoyed.
A book I've read recently and enjoyed. It's a book that
can be more than one book if you've got more.
Well, quite a few, because I do enjoy my detective fiction. There's a writer called D.M. Devine, a Scot, and he wrote his first novel. He entered it for a competition with Agatha Christie as a judge. This is the early 1960s, and it was a competition for academics writing a Don's detective story. And he wrote such a book, and Agatha Christie awarded him the first prize. Then it turned out he wasn't technically an academic. He worked he was a senior person in the offices of St Andrews University, but he wasn't technically a lecturer, an academic. So he didn't win the prize. Two other books shared the prize. But Agatha Christie always liked Devine, and he did get published. And he was actually, to be honest, a better writer than the two who actually won the prize. And the book that I read recently, the books are quite hard to find at the moment, but it's called On His Own Appointed Day. And it's a book about a 16-year-old boy who goes missing in, needless to say, mysterious circumstances. And it's very clever the way he balances the plot, the characterization, social comment. He's noted for his plotting, Devine, but he's a very good writer as well. I read another one by him as well very recently, and that too was absolutely first rate. That was called The Sleeping Tiger, and I got it in a secondhand bookshop in Wigtown, Scotland, the book town, and I saw it, bought it. It's really, really good. So D.M. Devine, he also wrote as Dominic Devine, very, very good writer, and deserves to be better known. I'll mention another one if I may. On my blog, every Friday, I write about a forgotten book. The blog, do you write under your own name? Every Friday, I write about a forgotten book from any time in the past, really. And today's book is a book by a guy called Harry Carmichael. It's a pen name, but he was very good on plot as well. And he's somebody I like. I don't think he's as good a writer as Devine, but he's good on plot and very good, snappy, entertaining writing. And I like him a lot as well.
Cool. You always get an interesting recommendation off you when we ask you about because you're so broadly read.
Well, I've spent many years hunting these books down, and of course I enjoy it. I enjoy finding these these obscure books. And of course, not every one of them is great. Yeah, I'm the first to admit that. I don't pretend that every old book, every Golden Age novel is great. Far from it. But there were many, many good ones that have been forgotten and neglected and deserve better. There were some very good ones written in the run-up to the Second World War that, of course, just got totally forgotten because people had other things on their mind. There's a number I can think of. One of the best books of the Golden Age, a book called Lonely Magdalene by Henry Wade, published in 1939. It's fantastic. It's a masterpiece, but it's just published at the wrong time. And what can you do?
He wasn't to know, was he? I presume.
No.
Are you planning a sequel for Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife?
Well, the short answer is no. But if you'd asked me this a year ago, I would have said, "Was the effect of Over My Dead Body?" Because it was hard work. But I have softened. I've relented, and it's important in life when you're not correct. It's important in life to accept it and say to the other person they were right. And my editor and my agent were right in encouraging me, as they did, to write this book. I was very, very uncertain about it for perfectly logical reasons, but I was wrong. They were right. This book has been, for me, it's been a terrific experience in the end, even though it really was hard work to write for the reasons I've mentioned. And so I had a conversation. I had lunch with my agent last summer, and he said, "Yeah, you never know, Martin." He says, if this book really takes off, you could write another one. Like, James, I am never going to write another. But never say never is the is the correct answer. Never say never again, James Bond line. So who knows? I don't know. Of course, it will depend on how this one does. The early signs commercially are very promising. It's both in Britain and in translation. It's sold incredibly well before actual publication. So
got a bestseller tag on Amazon.
Well, it's not really what I expected in those dark days. So if it continues to do well, and of course my publishers and I will be banging on about it all the way up to Christmas and probably afterwards, then who knows? It's not impossible. I did, without giving too much away, I did leave open the possibility of another book at the end of the book.
This is good to know. As much as I'm excited about the new Rachel Savonate book, more books from you is always an exciting thing to hear.
Well, that's very kind. And I've got plenty of ideas for doing different things. Ideas I'm excited about. It's just the time because if you're going to write a decent book, it is going to take your time. You just can't, or at least I can't, just sort of bang it out just like that. It takes time, and it takes rewriting. Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife was rewritten numerous times, right up to the deadline, and probably beyond, if I'm honest. And that's true of pretty much all my books, but it's particularly true of this one, because I wanted to make it better, make it as good as it could possibly be. And so that does take time.
Sarah has said that she did a happy dance hearing about more Rachel on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love writing about Rachel. She's an interesting character. She's an unusual character. I've never read a character quite like Rachel anywhere, and that's unusual, I think, in fiction, in crime fiction. And I think there's a lot of potential there. And Jacob too. I like writing Jacob enormously. So and the dynamics of the different recurring characters. So although those books are, again, they're complex and intricate, so they take quite a bit of time to write, I am keen to do more.
Which is very good news for us.
Thank you.
Remind people what they're going to go away and be buying as we wrap up.
Well, the book that I hope people will go away and buy, and it's because it's so beautifully produced by the publishers, it makes a lovely gift as well. I should say that for Christmas. But it's called Miss Winter in the Library with a Knife. It's got quite a number of puzzles. It's got a game within a game in the storyline. But above all, it's a story, and it's a book that pokes fun at the whole world of publishing. And although, as I say, it was hard work to write, I'm very, very happy it's come out in the way that it has done.
Which is great, and I'm sure it will be wonderful, because
thank you.
You've not let us down in the very long career that you have had with your books. I'm a big fan of quite a few of the series that you write. So
appreciate that, Caroline.
Going to be excellent, I'm sure. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Always great to chat to you, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And here's to the next book and the next time.